You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
The perfect voice right there.
Yeah, well, it is literally stand-up comedy is what we're doing at this point.
That's my favorite kind.
Is it really?
The sit-down comedy is just not that good.
Oh, no.
You get
can't
lazy.
Sit down. You can't sit down and tell a joke.
You know who did
Or the lie-down comedy? I mean,
Tell my wife that. I mean,
She laughs at me every time.
I said, hey, welcome to the Man Cave Happy Hour. I said, hey, welcome to the Man Cave Happy Hour. We're gonna drink a fine whiskey and smoke a really fine cigar.
All right, here we go. It's happy hour. It's time for the Man Cave Happy Hour. Whiskey, spirits, cigars, the stories that go along with it. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
I am Matthew Fox.
And we are downtown Detroit. Once again, we head out on the road and we find people and we have fun. And there's whiskey in town. And
there's new whiskey in town.
There's new whiskey in town. And we're at the MOCAD, the Museum of Modern Art. Something, I don't know. It's like SHIELD. Don't try to figure out the acronym. Just go to the MOCAD. It's modern art. And then figure it out.
But it's a wonderful space in here.
It is a great venue.
Yeah.
And then we're going to slaughter the name. Glyph.
Glyph. There you
I'm
go.
saying it correct.
You got it.
All right.
No,
So
G-L-Y-P-H. Yeah.
Glyph. Okay, I said it correct. So
Yeah.
Glyph, is it spirit whiskey or whiskey? What is
TTB says it is spirit whiskey with natural flavors. Not spirit whiskey, not whiskey. Spirit whiskey with natural flavors.
Fair play. All right.
Love
so
it.
Glyph whiskey. Can we we'll just simplify it and say Glyph whiskey.
I'm okay with that.
We'll say Glyph whiskey.
We call
I'll
it
say Glyph
molecular
whiskey.
whiskey, sort of like
Molecular
around the
whiskey.
fireplace, but
Yeah, and that's the thing. We have two very, very nice gentlemen here with
Yes.
us tonight.
Those
I want
voices.
to introduce Josh, and I want to introduce Alec as well. And these are the founders of Glyph Whiskey.
Thank you so much for coming down and being in the man cave or letting us invade your space.
Yeah.
no, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
So we're actually kind of well known for just invading spaces
Yeah, that's kinda what we do.
just showing up and saying, hey, we're here, let's do a show.
Yeah.
Right.
So, all right. So, Glyph whiskey. It is a molecular whiskey, and because I've read a couple things, and I was just amazed by what you guys have going on, and so it's just the licensing of the name, and you know, then you get the government involved, and like, thanks a lot for being involved in my life. I really appreciate that, and. So you guys are having a hard time because you have a very niche of what you do. It's absolutely unique. I don't know if there's anybody doing anything similar or
Not
close
that
to
we
similar.
know of. Not yet.
Right.
And so you're having a hard time with being categorized. So, all right, so molecular whiskey, what is molecular whiskey? So open up a hornet's nest, right?
There's a lot of ways to answer that question.
Yes.
But the quickest, the dirtiest version is molecular
We like it
whiskey.
dirty, so go
All right,
go
great.
on. Go on.
All right. Now, it won't be that kind of dirty this
right,
time.
fair.
I have a lot of other analogies for that, but not for this show. Molecular whiskey is like electronic music for whiskey.
Okay.
There's a traditional, well-known, established, long-standing way by which you make whiskey.
Yeah.
In a barrel, you make music with pianos
Yeah.
and symphonies and whatnot.
Yeah.
Okay.
And someone comes along one day and says, well, if I can digitize those notes,
Right. Synthesize it a little bit.
Yeah. then I can design them from the ground up. And I can make new sounds that instruments can't make, or I can make sounds that instruments can make, but it's still fundamentally, to be done well, needs to have the core elements of music.
Yeah.
Most electronic music artists
Yeah.
are trained musicians.
True.
But that doesn't really answer the question of what it is.
Yeah, okay.
So molecular whiskey is a construct. It is the designed version of a whiskey when you start with a blank slate or blank canvas of water and grain spirit,
Okay.
as neutral and as clean as possible.
Sure.
And when you take one molecule at a time that you've extracted from various plants, yeast, fruits, vegetables, that is found in whiskey,
Right.
and that you then layer them on one at a time to sort of build it from the ground up. And so at a molecular level, it is whiskey,
Okay.
but every molecule was chosen for a specific purpose to do a specific task, right, within a specific concentration. And that's really sort of like we're talking about the design component.
Yeah.
But that's sort of like what it is. It is molecules, but at a molecular level, it is still identical to whiskey, still from natural extracts.
It sounds like there's a process. So what does that process kind of look like when you're selecting the different types of flavor notes that you're doing or trying to get out of your whiskey? So what does that process look like?
Yeah, so Josh can probably best describe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the process, so what we do first is we take commercial whiskey, we kind of, we
You gotta be a
figure out
rock
the
star, man. You gotta be
molecular,
right up
yeah,
on that.
right up there. It's so weird with things
No,
close to my
seriously,
face, you
it's
know what I
like-
mean?
No, it's these
just
are
be
like
dirty
really,
with it, you're
yeah.
Yeah. just-
So with like traditional whiskey, we kind of look at the molecular fingerprint. We look at the building blocks that make up whiskey.
Yep.
And what we do is we, after looking at what building blocks make up whiskey and what makes whiskey taste like whiskey, we source out those building blocks or molecules from elsewhere in nature. So that might be plants, yeast, other fruits. So
You said apricot earlier.
yeah,
That's
so you
what
said
I was
apricot
smelling.
earlier,
Yeah.
and the thing that I said about that was like, our whiskey does not necessarily have like apricot in it, but
Right.
apricots might have the same molecule that makes apricots taste like apricots, and
So
that
unique.
might be one of the
Yeah.
molecules that we use.
Josh, Alec, this is like mad scientist shit. What is your background? Where do you guys come from? Alec, tell me about your childhood.
So that's an interesting question because I grew up distilling rakia, which is like a Serbian brandy, with my grandpa. He had an orchard and he grew grapes, he grew apples, and he sort of fermented his own wine. And
He's a bootlegger from way back.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Well,
like Detroit, big time. Right on.
absolutely. So that was my first foray into spirits. But I'm a trained scientist. I studied biotechnology. I started a couple companies before, so this is adventure number 3
So
for
you're
me.
classically trained is what you're saying, right?
Sure.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Or first as a distiller, and then as a scientist. So
Okay.
that's my background.
So what about you, Josh?
Yeah, so me, I studied science back in college. I was the person who like switched majors like 10 times, but eventually I landed on wanting to become a sommelier because it was such a cool intersection of art and science and culture and gastronomy to me.
Wow.
So I eventually dropped out of college to become a sommelier and kind of dedicate myself to learning about beverages. And this project was perfect because it was
Right.
the convergence of my two interests. Which was
So how did the two of you connect?
That was my
Yeah.
question. How did the two of you converge together?
We passed
right?
each other on the street one day. I tripped him by
look-
accident.
yeah.
Yeah, you
Like,
look like a scientist. No, you look like a scientist. Wait a minute.
So
Exactly.
he's got a can of peanut butter. That one had a bar of chocolate.
Yeah, there you go. We ran into each other. That's what it was.
Boom. Next thing you know. So how'd you connect?
We studied at the same university. So University of British Columbia in Vancouver,
Right.
all 3 founders. So we have another co-founder who's not here, who's our CTO. He and I started working on it originally, and then 6 months in we were like, we don't know enough about wine to like finish the job.
Yeah.
We need to find someone who knows.
Because your first venture was a wine.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
because
right.
the
Before
first
whiskey.
thing. Yeah, before you did whiskey, you're
Yeah.
like, let's
Yeah.
do a molecular wine.
And we couldn't bring the wine to where we are right
And
now.
so the
We're
wine
gonna-
was
we're gonna
just
be-
an utter fail.
So the wine is here.
Oh,
Is
the
he-
wine
no,
was
that's
here.
what
Is
they
that what
got
you
us.
handed us that we
That's
walked
what we
away from?
served.
Yeah.
That's not the
Hey.
failed
Sorry,
here.
that was
Pardon
bad
my
timing on my
French.
part. I was like, here.
I didn't know. I'm like, I'm drinking your whiskey, dude. Why are you handing me a wine? What the hell?
Come
Come on, you
Oh
are
my
a girl
God.
drink drunk. Don't lie.
I am no. Just I had the CO2 one. Yeah, put an umbrella in that. I'm a happy camper.
I love that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so you started with the wine, but the wine. So I thought the wine was like a failure. So the wine worked well.
The wine works great.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
We can't talk yet about how well it worked, but pretty soon, when we go public with some of that information,
Okay.
I think people will be
Fair.
pleasantly surprised.
Jamie, shut up.
Yeah, no,
or be
seriously.
very upset with
You
what they
guys-
said about it.
This is straight up Star Trek crap. It's the replicator.
Love it. Thank you.
We're deep. We're at 10 forward, going. I want X, and molecularly it's created,
Yes.
and you could have X bourbon, X year, X barrel.
Absolutely.
Yep.
This is like straight up Star Trek stuff. I'm like, oh my God, these guys are like, when did
Mad
you be
scientists,
down?
yeah.
It's truly one. I could see where, I mean, this has like some Deep Space Nine
I mean,
applications.
I
It
grew up
really
on
does.
Star Trek.
Yep.
10 forward, is that right? Do you have my geek
You
on
did it
for that?
right. Yeah, that's right.
Sure.
That
yeah.
was on
It's just
Generations,
Stardate,
though. That was
Stardate, and then
What's
I'll
their
just, like,
bar? What's their bar called? Is it 10 forward?
It was
Is it
10 forward. You did it
Okay,
perfectly
fair play.
right.
All right.
The
I was a
Trekkies would be
DS9
proud of you.
fan. I grew up
right,
on
right,
Voyager.
right.
So you grew up on the Promenade, is where you grew up on.
Yeah.
Very good. That's a promenade party.
They still had the replicator, and that's all that matters.
That's exactly.
So this is like straight up Star Trek stuff. So you started with the wines.
Yep.
Sorry, I got ADD. Can you tell? So we started
Okay,
with the
so we started
wine.
with wine, and we got like 6 months in, and there was something about it that still wasn't wine-like, and it was kind of like wine, but it wasn't quite there. And part of the issue was like we just didn't know enough about a lot of the subtle nuance that makes wine itself. So we were like, we need to find someone who knows what the hell they're talking about.
Right.
Josh was the president of the UBC Wine Club.
Hey.
It's just really capitalizing on my drunkenness.
Right?
It's just the dream. No,
I love it.
But yeah, that's kind of I kind of hopped on, kind of giving my background on wine and kind of my palate, and that's kind of how I joined the team initially.
After, of all things, working at a natural wine bar.
True.
We
natural.
poached him out of a natural wine bar
Right.
to do this.
you really?
Star Trek
So
wine.
did a lot of that have to do with your palate? Because you said you're like the master taster almost. Is that correct? One of them. You do a lot of tasting of the whiskey itself.
Yeah,
that
I
you're
do a lot of
making?
tinkering.
Yeah. So what
yeah.
does your palate feel? Because my palate is so novice. I taste something, I'm like, ooh, it tastes like I tried something a week ago. Tonight I tried it. It was completely different from what I've ever tried before. So where does your palate come from? How did you educate your palate to be where it is today?
Yeah, so well, I mean, I explored a lot of my wines. I started early on in college, and I studied a lot of my wines and spirits back then, and of course, just dedicating a lot of time to doing a lot of tasting and like working in the wine and spirits industry. So like working in restaurants, consulting, writing, and retail as well.
That's great.
You just get to taste a lot every day and kind of hone your craft.
So you trained your palate.
Yeah,
So you're
basically.
classically trained, just like.
So we got the wine down, and then you guys are like, what was the idea for the whiskey? How did we switch from
where did
wine
Glyph come from?
to whiskey?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you start with a blank canvas that is water and neutral grain spirit, everything else is kind of like up to you.
Okay.
You can go anywhere. And so it doesn't have to be wine, it doesn't have to be spirits, it doesn't have to be beer. You can sort of like mix and match. What we really wanted to do was show that the technology isn't like one little pigeonhole.
Okay.
It's not just whiskey, it's not just wine,
Dude, you're
it's
making
not
a
just
replica-
anything.
So making a replicator. I love this.
Yeah.
I
And
just
so that's
love
why
it.
the second product, it's not going to be another whiskey.
Yeah.
We don't want to be seen as like, oh, that's just the molecular whiskey company. We're going to show things that are very, very different from each other.
Okay.
But the core underlying thing is like this approach of going after it molecule by molecule and sort of, I don't want to say like putting the idea of craft on its head, but just saying that there's another way to think about craft. That like, craft is great. Like, look, I was distilling, brandy with my grandpa. Like, it was a little pot still. Like, I get why people care about history and tradition. I care about those things too.
Right.
I just don't believe that the world always has to be in a box that someone else made for us.
Okay.
And so we just wanted to say, like, what happens when we open up that box?
It's your Deep Space Nine. I love it. So, where did this flavor profile come from that we're trying in Glyph in this spirit whiskey?
Yeah, so like early on, I mean, whenever people hear about molecular whiskey and like the replicator, people always like ask, oh, like what whiskey do you want to like emulate or copy? And
Right.
We realized early on that like we don't want to make exact copies, we want to create our own unique flavor profile. So originally we were very inspired by a lot of these sherry cask aged whiskeys of the old world, so like a lot of the unpeated, non-smoky styles.
Right.
And then over the course of its production, it took on more of a kind of a lighter Japanese meets a soft Canadian style. So it's pretty,
So
light.
unique.
And it's something that hasn't been kind of like explored or tapped in, and it's kind of a unique offering, and that's what ultimately we wanted to do, is to provide something that was new and unique.
Yeah. It is a very unique flavor. Like, so when my palate is very novice. Jamie's palate is very novice, and this is why we do the Man Cave, because we want to learn.
Yeah.
We really want to learn, and learning from the experts, like two of you, just makes it that much easier to learn.
Have you ever been to the Catalina wine mixer? That's what I want to know.
No.
No. All right, never mind. It's a bad joke. Never mind.
Oh, was I supposed to say yes?
No, no, it's bad. Step Brothers, motherfucking Catalina
Oh,
wine mixer. All right.
okay, yeah.
You're a wine guy, right? Anyway.
There was
All right.
no
So what is the process? Because from what I understand, this gets produced pretty quickly. So what's the mash bill? Is there a mash bill?
There's a molecular mash bill.
So there's a molecular mash bill because traditionally whiskeys and bourbons have like a mash bill. So what is your mash bill and what is the distillation or production process as much as you can tell us?
Sure. I mean, a lot of the start of it is very similar to whiskey, right? You have grain, it needs to be distilled, you need to get the alcohol from somewhere. For us, it doesn't really matter where the alcohol comes from because we want it as neutral and as pure as possible.
So
no
water
flavor.
comes into that.
Yeah, that's
really,
right.
Yeah.
So like you could theoretically do it from cane or from sugar beets or from anything. But corn is cheap, especially in this country. And so most of our distillate comes from corn as neutral as possible. So it's like 6 or 7 times distilled, effectively like what you'd use for the precursor of vodka. And then we add water. That's where you start. Obviously, at that point, it's basically just vodka.
Yeah.
So you've only just begun.
Okay.
We do extract some molecules from wood that we can't commercially source.
Fair.
So actually, all the color that you see is 100% wood extract. There's no caramel color in that. There's no artificial coloring.
It's wood extract.
It's wood extract. It's literally an overnight extraction that we do to get the color out, to get certain molecules out for the flavor and for aroma.
So you're not doing any tanning at all. It's all from wood. Yeah.
Yeah. With that said, even after we've done the wood extract, it is still very much not whiskey.
Yeah.
It is far from it from a flavor profile.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So there's the bottle. There's the color. Like I said, there's no artificial coloring in there.
It's got a very nice amber feel to it.
That is all from wood, and so that sort of comes together. That's sort of like the updated canvas.
Yeah.
And then after that, those individual notes, those molecules sort of go in. The things that you would find in whiskey and the things that we've designed. The making of it is easy. This happens overnight.
Yeah.
But the designing of it is really hard. We went through 2,000 different
2,000?
iterations.
Yeah. Wow. My
over
goodness.
almost 2 years. But now that we've made it, we can make it now and tomorrow and in 1,000 years. You'll be able to make the same thing.
Because it's the same thing over and over again at that point, right?
That's right.
You're just replicating the same thing.
That's right.
Yeah. So now when you're, and this is coming in at 43%. So when you're making, when you grab an existing bourbon or whiskey, and you grab a profile of it, like the molecular profile, how much do you need to be able to identify the molecular structure? Because I mean, there's probably some rare bourbons that someone would be like, yeah, I would pay you to make this again. This is my last dram. You know, could you do this again? How much do you need to extract that profile?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the weeds a little bit with this analogy, but we're still in the very early days of the technology.
Okay.
And the analogy I'd use is the early Xerox machines, right? They're analog, and they have a lot to in the image.
Okay.
And the problem is that our noise and our tongues are very sensitive.
Sure.
And
so
so we, what we do is literally not analog, it's digital, but we're still in the early days of developing the technology, right? We're building this from a lot of it is kind of like off-the-shelf equipment, but we're trying to like fundamentally build a lot of new methods from the ground up.
Right.
And primary research takes time.
And you're creating a database of flavor profiles
That's
as time goes on.
time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So one day, you'll be the descendant of this technology.
Yes.
We'll be able to make those copies.
Okay.
But not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. All right.
So it's kind of like the first time Jeff Goldblum sent that monkey through the thing.
Right.
Didn't end well.
No.
See, that I got. That one I got. That one I got.
All right, Jeff
I mean,
Goldblum,
our
the
first
fly.
wine also didn't end well for anyone.
No,
involved.
it did not, did it?
So you pulled. Now you have molecular. Okay, this is kind of an apricot fruity flavor, and this is kind of a smoky molecular design, and you add these molecular combinations. Science boys, help me out here. Is that the right word?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, fair play.
Yeah.
There's like, go with it. It's like
You're
drinking-
an English major, so
it's like drinking your whiskey.
stop while you're
Just
ahead.
use
man.
words. So, and you kind of pick those out until this fruity flavor, this smoky flavor worked well together, and is what we liked.
Wow.
And is what we're putting in here.
Yep.
So so you're not really replicating anything yet, but that's really I mean, this is the first steps towards that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Man.
It'll be an interesting application of the technology.
One day,
But
yeah.
we're not coming to the table being like, hey guys, we're about to counterfeit all your products, so
Sure.
look out.
I think that's
Right.
what people are afraid of.
Right.
I think that's what people
Look, I get
think of.
But we can't realistically live in this world,
No,
in
you
this
really-
industry,
Sure.
if that's the kind of way that we're going to conduct business.
No.
We want to make our own things that people haven't made before, and that's
And you
that's
are.
the
And you are,
end of the
because
road.
That database that you're creating, you can pick and choose whatever you want to create
That's
that
right.
taste
That's right.
profile that you want
Yeah.
to create. So
Yeah, but
love
look,
that.
some other makers might come to us and be like, "We have 10 cases left of this stuff, and
Yeah.
it's sold really well. And
Right.
We love it."
What can you do? Can you replicate what we already do?
That's right. Can you make more of it?
We ran
And-
out of water. Jack Daniels would never say that because they source it out of the ground. But
Yeah.
you know, if they're running out of product, you know,
Yeah.
you guys can come in and really help them out.
That's right.
That's
right.
amazing. Never thought about that until just now.
All right. So talk to me. There's so many things. We're going to be here for an hour. I'm sorry.
Sounds good.
No, we're not going to be here. I won't. We won't keep you that long. But tell me about the bottle. What? Who designed the bottle and the labeling and this whole the naming? Where'd this come from?
So the design
cool. Yeah, I like
is a good collaboration of in-house and agency work.
Sure.
I can tell you, 85H is the designation. That is the version of the whiskey that we came out with. It's
Okay.
like sort of like a little Easter egg. It's
Okay.
internally meaningful, but externally meaningless.
Sure.
Each of the icons. We wanted something that sort of evoked navigation, like looking out onto the horizon,
Yeah.
searching for new things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of where you get the compass rose from.
frontiers.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I was
the
gonna ask
block
about
up there. Exactly.
Sorry.
It's look, we're in San Francisco. We're in sort of like the wild west of
Sure.
like how you can play with new science
Sure.
and new technology. As for the name, you can talk about that.
Yeah, so for us, like, if we think about these molecules from our analyses, like different symbols that make up the entire like big picture,
I'm
and that
putting
things.
4 and 5 together. And
Yeah,
getting 10, so,
yeah. So like just like putting things together like in a synergistic way. We wanted to kind of allude to the fact that that's what we're kind of doing, and with Glyph, like hieroglyph, like
Yes.
Okay.
all these little
There it is. Yep.
molecules are like symbols for the
Yeah.
the bigger picture, or the whiskey in the end.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Loving
you.
it. I love the whole concept, and that it's like it's
Thank you.
so innovative. It's
Thank you.
and it tastes pretty darn good.
Yes, it
Thank
does.
you.
How do you like it?
Because I was smelling it. I was because you come in with molecular, and so I'm like, it's going to be very chemically, and it didn't. Didn't get a strong aroma when we first hit it.
No, it had a
'Cause
very
normally
it
in the
had,
man
had an
cave, we,
easy
like,
nose to it.
Sip
Had-
things up.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't getting much of nothing, and then I came back in, and I was saying it's fruity, and that's right when you walked up, and I was like, it's kind of apricots. I go, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe apricots. I don't know, maybe some sort of fruit. And then on the taste, what'd you get on the taste, Matthew?
On the taste, when I did the original taste, because we always do our first taste neat of anything that we've ever tried. We always do it neat, because we want to get the most pure taste that we can.
Yeah.
When I hit it the first time, I had a good vanilla feel to that. You know, and anyone that listens to the show knows I love that vanilla feel. But I really felt that vanilla at the onset. But then after about 3 minutes or so, it just sat in the back of your throat, and it just really coated your throat really nicely in a nice warm way. But the taste, it was not overbearing. It was just you wanted to go back for more, and that's what you want. That's what you
Absolutely.
want.
It's like any other whiskey. There's layers to it, right?
Yeah,
the thing at the
it just-
beginning isn't the same in the middle. It's not the
There was
same
that
at the
smoky
end.
flavor.
I
They
had
did a
a-
smoky drink, and there's a smoky
Yeah.
flavor to it as well.
Yeah.
I had a preconceived notion again, because it's being a blend and a molecular
Sure.
thing. I was expecting like an ethanol base in there,
Sure.
just because you're dealing with a pure
Sure.
thing and adding to it.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't get an ethanol taste at all.
No,
great.
no.
But I didn't get a lot of the flavor on the first taste. But the second and third,
Yeah.
I was getting. It was very fruity. It was very
Right.
light, very fruity. On the second and third taste for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And I like that. I'm a girl drink drunk. Everybody knows that. Put an umbrella in it, and I'm fucking happy as a
Well, then you're going to love the wine.
Yeah.
CO2 it is, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's but enjoy it. So here's one more question. So you're in San Francisco.
Yep.
You were in another city, and now the third and
New York
fourth
City.
Detroit. And so why Detroit? Why Michigan?
So I grew up in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Not too far from here.
Okay.
I've lived in a lot of places since then, but this
All
is
right.
still the only place that feels like home.
Oh, right on.
enough.
Where'd you grow up?
But so I went to Groves High School. I grew up in West
Oh,
Bloomfield.
okay. Yeah. No. I live.
What's up, neighbor?
Cool. Yeah.
My boy went to Seaholm. So.
Oh, awesome.
yeah.
Cool.
We're in Troy, so.
Yeah.
Cool. But the reality is we would have launched here as a very early market, even if we had no connection to here at all.
Sure.
And the
Okay,
reason is because there's a lot of really cool stuff happening, like cultural revival, like rethinking housing, rethinking art, rethinking music, that is kind of always been happening here, but is especially happening now. And like, look, we're rethinking whiskey. And we think that this is a great place where we can tell that story.
Detroit's got a lot of stuff rolling on with the spirits, so yeah.
At the same time, we just launched Hong Kong last week.
Oh boy.
And Hong Kong's a very different market.
How about them tariffs?
Not in Hong Kong yet.
Oh, not in Hong Kong
Yeah,
yet?
yeah.
All
It's
right.
just kind of its own, thankfully, isolated place.
Right on.
But Hong Kong is such a different market. It's a place where you can sell a $30,000 bottle of whiskey all day long because it's about like what you can show and like what you can bring to the party and what you can give to your friends. And they were like, look, we only want to bring in like 100 bottles because we only move like 60 bottles of whiskey a month.
Okay.
And they sold out 100 bottles in the first day.
Wow.
So we had to send another pallet, and then 5 days later they were like, we need you to send another pallet,
man, that's great.
and we're going to fly it over
Congratulations.
because
That's
we need
fantastic.
it now.
Oh my God! So the turnaround, having a quick turnaround, is very helpful.
Yeah, and so like, it's not just it's not just one market, right? People hear something for themselves in this, based on whatever they bring to the table, right? It speaks different things to different people.
So you said you did wines. Now you've done the whiskey.
Yeah.
You said you don't want to do another whiskey next. You want to go somewhere else. Can you tell us where you're going next?
Not yet, but you'll find out very soon.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
After we get off the air.
Yeah, after we get off the air.
All right.
Our lawyers won't be thrilled about me saying it on the air.
Sure.
Okay.
Looking forward to it, though.
Right. So we've monopolized your time. Josh, Alec, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
thank you.
Taking away from
This
your
was great.
guests. I really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Alec,
Thank you.
Josh.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, well, the drinks are over there.
Yeah.
Cheers, fellas. Thank you very much.